What is going on, beautiful people? I hope you are having a fantastic day. Welcome back to another episode of the Thrive Forever Fit Show. As always, I'm grateful for you. I'm pumped that you're here. And the fact that you spend your time listening to me rant and rave is unbelievably amazing to me. And I couldn't be more grateful for it. Secondarily, this podcast is sponsored by a brand new product that I have just released to the market. It's called Elite Collagen. If you're not taking a collagen product, then you just don't care about your healthy skin, your healthy hair, your healthy nails, your joints, your cardiovascular health, just your overall body wellness. Collagen is an amazing product that is going to help with everything. And listen, I mean, you're exposed to a lot of elements. Why not internally fortify your system with a beautiful collagen? But here's the situation. Some of you guys are no, hey, bud, I'm already taking a collagen. Appreciate you. Got you. I got bad news. The problem is this. Most collagen powders are just that. They're powdered collagens, and they're made from bovine, which is cows, or porcine, which is pig's skin. Have you ever seen a cow's skin or a pig's skin? Some of them are plant derived. We won't even get into those. The collagen, it's not even really a collagen product. It's a makeup of stuff that tries to become collagen. But if you're taking a collagen powder, one of those big hefty collagen, gross, chalky, whatever it is, just know that it's coming from skin of cows and pigs. And of course they wash them. But if you've ever been at a pig farm or a cow farm, not the most savory of things. My collagen is a marine-based collagen. And here's the big thing. Forget all the other shit I've already said. Here's the differentiation between mine and the one you're already taking. Mine is half a tablespoon every day. It's a delicious chocolate mint flavor. And here's the big stuff. Here's the real deal. Here's what nobody's telling you. The powdered collagens get broken down inside of the gastrointestinal stomach, inside of the stomach. That's not where collagen gets absorbed. Collagen actually gets absorbed and has a higher efficacious benefit if it's absorbed in the small intestine. Well, see, mine passes through the stomach based on a beautiful collection of polymers and a collection of these peptides. If you heard that, that's just Rudy taking a sneeze. He likes to be introduced in some of these podcasts, and I didn't give him a proper shout out. But my collagen actually passes through the stomach and gets digested inside of the small intestine, which is where all the magic happens. Your powdered product's not even making it there. So you're getting very minimal, if any, efficacious effects from drinking that chalky, gross tasting powder product. So if you're interested, just go to thriveforeverfit.com, go to my store. You'll see Elite Collagen on there. You can pop me a note. I'll give you all the details. It is unbelievably amazing. I've been taking it for a while because I've been testing it and creating it and everything. Guys, it is revolutionary and it is unbelievable. I can't wait for you to try it. Elite Collagen. Go grab yourself some today. Take care of your skin. Jeremy, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Jay. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. We had a little chat before I clicked record, which I was already enjoying, so I didn't want to waste any more of our content. So Kansas City, Missouri, wife, 2 kids. What's life like in Kansas City right now?
It's pretty hot. Our baseball team's bad again, and but we have the best quarterback in the world, so it's good times.
You know what? I was going to get to that. I didn't know if you were a sports dude or not, but you just took the words right out of my mouth. All right, so let me ask you this. Have you always been a diehard Chiefs guy, or is it just because we got ourselves a little stud back there?
I grew up here, so I've been a diehard. So I went through heartbreak after heartbreak in the 90s when we never won a playoff game. And I think it was 90. I think it was when we had Joe Montana. One year we had Joe Montana as the quarterback, and we won a playoff game in 93, I think. And then it was either 93 or 94. And then we didn't win one for, I don't know, it was like 28 years or 30 years or something stupid like that. So
see, I can respect that. It's, you know what, when Mahomes came into the league, it's all of a sudden, like, I live out in California. I'm like, there's people rocking Mahomes jerseys everywhere. I'm like, you've never even been to Kansas City. I guarantee you probably think it's in Kansas.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, you know, that's always my little question. I'm like, hey, where's that at? And they're like, I don't know. I just love Mahomes. I love the jersey. But I like my big Andy Reid guy. Like, I think he's a good dude. Like, he seems like the kind of, I base my sports now on like what I want to hang out with the guy. Right. And Andy Reid's kind of like, hey, you want to go grab a coffee or maybe something to eat? Like he would be a blast. So
cheeseburger. Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, we're not going anywhere healthy if Andy's driving.
Right.
So, but he seems like a really, really cool dude. And the baseball team, I mean, isn't Pat a major owner in that now?
I think he's a minor.
A minor. Okay.
But yeah, it's we had a fun run in 2014 and 2015.
Yeah.
Got the World Series, swept our way. We started the wild card in 2014. Crazy 12-inning comeback, insane game that I was at. And then we swept our way through the playoffs all the way to the World Series, lost in game 7 by 1 run and to Madison Bumgarner, essentially. Yep. And then came back in 2015 and won it. So, but then, yeah, cool. It's been kind of downhill ever since then.
Well, listen, I'm a Cowboys fan, so we haven't been good. And since, I can't even remember, I was in high school. So, it's not even fun to talk about sports for me. I'm a Cowboys and a Rangers fan. So, and you know how the Rangers World Series have gone as well.
Oh yeah. So I was actually in St. Louis when that one happened. So
heartbreak. So yeah, I can't even really talk about it without getting emotional. So, well, dude, I'm glad you're here, man. I appreciate you taking the time. And the reason that I found you is because of this book. So congrats on the book. I've written 2 books myself. And so I have a soft place in my heart for anybody who's willing to take on the gauntlet of actually doing this.
Right.
Because I think before I wrote, people like, oh, you should write a book. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I wrote my first book and I'm like, oh my gosh. And they're like, hey, you should write another one. And I'm like, you're a psychopath.
Right.
So congrats on that, man. What was the, are you a writer by nature, or was this something you just felt heartfelt that had to happen, or how did this book come to fruition?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I did have a little bursts of writing in my, in growing up and in high school, and just little like spurts of like, okay, yeah, like I think I like writing, but I never did it consistently. I never really got into it much until my last executive that I supported had gotten fired. He'd burned out. Just long story short, got fired. And so I decided to resign and move on and try a different career, or not a different career, a different industry organization. And in that moment, I was 2016, I decided that I was actually burned out myself as well. Okay. And so I decided I did not want to burn out again. I didn't want my executive, my future, whoever I was going to support in the future, I didn't want them to burn out. And but it didn't stop there, because I've always been a helper at heart. And so I was like, I want to help as many assistants as I can, as many executives as I can. So I thought, well, what if I started blogging? What if I almost kind of had this coaching training program where I would help assistants find an executive assistant, equip and empower their executive assistant, and all the while resist burnout. And so I started blogging, I started getting active on LinkedIn, building my network. Over the years, started speaking, training, coaching. And so it's 2 years ago now, well, a little over 2 years, because the book's been out for 2 years. I said, all right, I think it's time. I kept having the same conversations over and over again. And I was like, all right, I think it's time to put everything down in a book, because I can't have these one-on-one coaching calls. I'm still a full-time executive assistant. I still, I have a day job. I have kids, I have family. So that's what really got me to say, all right, let's put all this down in a book. I can reach more people and don't have to necessarily increase the amount of time that I spend on this.
Right.
So.
Right. Was there any, I'm asking this because I had this feel, was there any like fear associated with, hey, nobody may read this thing?
Oh yeah, I even talk about this a little bit in the intro, but I basically had plenty of emotional turmoil as I was writing it. Things like imposter syndrome, things like, do I really want to be this vulnerable? Are people really going to be helped by this?
Yeah.
Is this actually going to be read? Is this worth it? I invested a lot of time, but I also invested a lot of money. Like I wanted to do it right. And so I paid for a graphic designer, a publishing partner. I paid for like another editor, even though I didn't necessarily need that editor. I went ahead and paid for another editor because I wanted to do
I
it
did the
right.
same thing. I did a double edit because I'm like, listen, if I'm gonna do this, like I
Yeah.
don't want to look like a stooge. Like
Right. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna invest a lot of time and money in this. And so then yeah, you're just like, I told my wife, who was very supportive and actually helped me really even line by line go through the book as well and really help make it better. But I told her, I said, well, it's gonna be an investment. Maybe we'll make the money back. I basically said my goal is to make the money back in 2 years. This was my goal. And thankfully it's gone well. We made our money back in like 6 months.
That's awesome.
And it's just been crazy ever since.
That's what you had me at the dedication to the grandparents. I got a soft spot in my heart for my grandparents. And so I flipped it out. I'm like, okay, this is a good dude. Like, yeah, you can just stop right there and you're a good dude.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is I didn't even really remember or acknowledge this until years into my assistant career, but my grandma was actually an assistant at TWA.
I read that.
Airlines.
Yeah.
And so, just kind of funny how that worked.
Let's talk about that. Cause I think, and this is one of the questions that Marissa, my assistant, we were kind of talking and she's like, I was like, what do you want to know? Like, what would you like to, if you could ask Jeremy questions, like, what would you want to know? And I had already had this question written down. So it was a beautiful one. I said, how did you decide you wanted to become, and I put professional in capital letters, like a professional executive assistant? Cause I think a lot of times people think of, oh, executive assistant, I'm just going to do this for a little while until I find something else to do, or it's just kind of a stepping stone into something else. Like, what made you like say, hey, like, because you said earlier, you said the word, I've always been a helper. And so I know there's a piece of that to it, but what was the path that got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think it was a career. No, I didn't really know anything about it. And I was doing music. I was a music, pastor, minister, worship leader, whatever you want to call it, for a nonprofit church organization. But I needed to pay my bills. And so I had to do other stuff and music. So I would started organizing. I started project managing. I started doing the details. And I just realized over time, as I did more of that so that I could justify getting paid more, I was like, man, everybody around me is terrible at showing up on time, replying to emails, managing calendar, keeping up with to-do lists. It's like, what is the deal? Like, am I really good at this, or are they just really bad at this?
Right.
And after a while, I realized it was both.
Yeah.
And then I think it was the executive assistant to my prior executive before I became his assistant sent me this article in the Harvard Business Review from Melba Duncan called "The Case for Executive Assistants," or something like that. I think it was called "The Case for the Executive Assistant," and it basically talks about the ROI, and it lines it out and says, okay, if you're a CEO, do you really want to pay yourself, whatever, I don't remember the exact numbers on this example. This was an older article, but it was like, do you really want to pay yourself $350 an hour to schedule meetings? Right. No, you don't want to do that. And so like you pay an assistant and you pay them well, but then you see how much return you're getting on your time and your investment on that assistant. And so that was the first time I was like, oh, this is a career.
Right.
So that was like the outside data point of, okay, this is actually a career and can be a career. So then I started leaning into it a little bit more and realizing, all right, I can actually provide for my family doing this. And then as I got into it and realized how it was better than going to college for an MBA, because I could see that from behind the curtain, how business is run, how organization is run, the good, the bad, the ugly. It just started feeding what I've always had, which is an entrepreneur itch. It kind of gave me a lot of ways to scratch that itch without the full risk of just leaping and trying to start a business or whatever. And then, it just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. To one of your points, you said something in the book that really resonated with me. You said you have an ability to see inefficiency really well and then want to correct it. And that is, I mean, that spoke to my heart, because I'm the same way. Like I can walk into an organization or just into a room, right, and watch the flow or the how people do things, like whether it's a service-based thing or whether it's a customer service or anything. And I'm really good at seeing inefficiency and then figuring out how to make it more efficient. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a trait that a lot of people don't have. And the fact that you do, and you do, that probably really sets you apart from, like you said, are these people not very good at this? Or am I just better? And I thought of this question when you were answering that. Did you open up a lot of the executives' eyes to the value that you brought to the table? Because I assume a lot of them at some point just had somebody who was like, hey, if that thing rings, answer it, get me a cup of coffee, just basic low level like things. Did you open up their eyes to the expansiveness of what you could bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was, hey, I'm drafting emails, or I'm writing emails on behalf of my executive,
Yeah.
or I'm writing communication for them, for the whole team, or I'm sitting in on meetings on their behalf while they're traveling, or um, you know, I started really getting involved in the creative video, audio, like creative department, and I had a lot of ideas, and I had a lot of kind of got my hands wet when it came to production and quality and media. And so even that, like, I was a big part of that team, with came up with a ton of the ideas and
Yeah.
would help them bounce ideas off and sit in all the meetings. And so yeah, I think it was one of those things where not only they needed somebody to execute their crazy ideas,
Right.
but as I was in there, I was always a different, unique opinion and vantage point than the people that I was working with, because
Right.
the people that I was working with were very scattered, creative, all these crazy ideas, some of them good, some of them terrible. And I was able to come in and be the kind of the realist and say, hey, that's not going to work in the setting, or actually that could work if we tweak this a little bit,
Right.
so
Well, that's a valuable asset. I don't care what kind of business you're running. I mean, so
right.
you became a value. Talk about ROI, right? Like you are consistently elevating your ROI based on your willingness. And let me ask you a question, because that's a gutsy move. Like, you know what I mean? To be like, hey, chief, that's not probably what we should do. What about this? I mean, did you work yourself into that? Or have you always been a guy who's like, hey, I got an idea and I'm going to tell you whether you want to hear it or not? Like, how did you, because I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not
Yeah,
something that everybody would feel comfortable doing. How'd you get there?
it takes time. You've got to build that rapport with your executive and your team. um, but there's a certain element of confidence that just comes with time and experience. But ultimately, my confidence in, this is what I talk a lot about in the book and in my training, my confidence is not based on the affirmation of my executive, or it's not based on whether or not my idea was used when I spoke up. It's based on the fact that I'm a valuable human being no matter what happens. And so that gives me that gutsy, risk taking mindset, because
Yeah.
I'm not worried about, oh, what if I say this idea and it's just terrible and nobody uses it? Well, I don't care.
Well,
Like,
let's talk about that, because that's a trait that more humans need, and that we're just talking about self-worth, right? Like your self-confidence, your self-worth. Have you always been someone who had a really high self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth? Because in my world, I deal with a lot of like human transformations, right? Like somebody trying to go from A to B, or trying to make some kind of transformation. It could even be financial or job related or relationship, whatever it might be. And that self-worth or lack of is usually a barrier to success. Have you always been someone who had a really high self-worth?
I mean, I wouldn't say always. I definitely had a good grounded upbringing, and I've always had good support system around me. Been blessed in that sense. But I think when as I got older and got out of my parents' house and into the real world, I realized that, okay, well, just take a step back. So my dad actually had a scenario where he lost his job, long story short, lost his job, and it really put him into depression and just a bad state for years. And so I saw that and I thought, okay, well, what's happening here? And I realized that he had put his entire worth and identity in his work in that job. And when he lost it,
Yeah.
when you lose that thing that you've kind of get your value from, then you don't feel like your life is worth living. And so when that happened to him, I saw that and I kind of took it as a red flag of like, all right, I'm probably going to be dealing with the same tendency, and I need to make sure that I don't put all of my worth in this job. And so at a low level, I did do that. Well, I started to do that where I was like, all right, if I lose this job, I'll find another one. It's no big deal. But I also put everything into that job. So I did have all my eggs in one basket, financially, socially, mentally, everything, even spiritually, like it was all in that basket. And so when that was gone, I did kind of have to start over, and I didn't set myself up to succeed in diversify, if you will.
Right.
But at least I had that alert from my dad's experience to know, okay, I can't make this job define who I am as a human being.
I love that. I want to dive into a little bit deeper though, because I'm just thinking of like something that I could hear somebody saying to that. So how do you do that? Like, how do you not attach yourself, right? Like, even if it's not all of your worth or whatnot, but how do you not attach that and still execute at the highest level, right? Like still be like, hey, this isn't define me, but I'm all in. Like you're I'm all in on this. Cause some people might have a disassociation and say, well, oh, screw this. It's just a job. Right. And then they don't show up and really perform at a high level. Then they get fired and they're like, well, that's crap. I got fired. Well, you didn't show up.
Right.
So how do you do both? Cause that's a gift.
Yeah. Well, there's a quote that I use in my book from Dorothy Sayers, and she talks about how the community as a whole, if the individual members of an organization or a community, if they are worried and concerned about the affirmation of others and the approval of others and the applause of others, she uses this phrase I love. It's called, she says, angle for applause. So it's kind of that like, oh, I'm gonna go over here so that I get that pat on my shoulder, and I'm gonna go over here so that they say thank you. I'm angling for applause.
Yeah.
And she says, no, we often think, and individuals will often think that, okay, I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to work overtime. I'm going to burn myself out because I need that affirmation from the team and the executive, or because I want that applause. And if I do that, I'll also do good work. Well, she flips it on upside down and says, no, actually the community as a whole, the organization as a whole is hindered and suffers when we do that. And so instead, she says, when the community flourishes, it's when the individual members serve the work instead of angling for applause.
Yeah.
So she talks about how you can serve the work. You can be excited about doing a good job, doing an excellent job, and disassociate it with angling for applause and trying to have that approval and that affirmation and essentially your worth. So you can detach your worth from your work and just serve the work. And so that's kind of how that framework that Dorothy Sayers talks about has really helped me shift my mindset of, okay, no, I'm not going to just be lazy and say, oh, it's just a job and whatever. No, I care about the work that I do, but I don't attach my value to it.
Yeah, you talk a lot in the book about avoiding burnout, right? Or trying to help people not get burned out. And when I think about what you do, I mean, I think high stress, high demand, especially based on the executive, right? Like I'm sure some of them are more high stress, high demand than others. some are more aloof and, whatever, but like, let's just talk about the complexity of all of that. Cause I think that regardless of the executive's personality type, it's still going to be a high stress, high demand job. How do you avoid that overwhelm or that burnout? Like I understand what Dorothy was saying about that, but still when, say I'm the executive and I'm with you, right? Like sometimes that's hard to, if I'm a very demanding human, that's hard to disassociate that in the moment. Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the two best ways to resist burnout. One is to set boundaries. So with my last executive, I had no boundaries. He would text me at, 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, where's my black sock, or where's my red sock, or, where's my belt, like just random crap like that.
Right.
And then I had, vacations. I didn't have vacations. I took time off, but I'd still be getting texts or having to check my email, and and he didn't do a very good job at taking vacations either. And so it was just like this culture of just work. So we didn't have any boundaries. So when I started with my new executive, I sat down with him. I said, listen, I'm going to be the best assistant you've ever had. I'm going to work my rear end off, but leave me alone on the weekends. And he's like, sounds good. I burned out at my last role. I don't want to do that again. Let's do this. So we set up boundaries. But it doesn't mean we don't work hard and don't work a lot. Like we actually have Monday and Wednesday nights are work late nights.
Okay.
So, if we've got a really intense season and we're just busting through all these projects, well, it's not every night we're just going to work late.
Right.
It's no, we're going to funnel all of that extra work into Monday and Wednesday nights. This helps us because we're on the same schedule, so that like we can ping each other back and forth and get what we need and kind of help each other out. But it also helps our families, because our families know, okay, Tuesday night, Dad's not going to work late.
Right. Yeah.
Monday and Wednesday, he might work late, but I know that he's not going to be like every night or every weekend. So boundaries is the big one. And then the second one is hobbies. I didn't have a hobby. So when I did finally have a day off, and I did have finally have a 24-hour stretch where my executive left me alone, I didn't know what to do with myself. It's like was it Anchorman? It's like, what do I do with my hands? Like, yeah. I didn't know what to do.
Talladega Nights.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, when Ricky Bobby's in his hands just fly up. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I was like, I don't know what to do. So what did I do? I'm too driven to just sit around and get drunk and watch TV. And, that's not my day off, which that shouldn't be anybody's refreshing day off anyway.
Right.
But I had to do something to stimulate my creativity, to engage my mind. And so what did I do? I logged onto my email and got some work done. So fast forward, I realized, okay, I need something to just point and focus that energy toward during my time off. That's not work.
Right.
And so for some people, it's, they run marathons, or they like to play tennis, or they like to garden. Some people, they like to work on their truck, all weekend. So, whatever it is, it's something that's refreshing to them, that's not work, but also keeps them going. So for me, it's been playing sports with my boys, helping them out with their baseball and soccer and all that. And then I actually really enjoy audio production, and so my podcast has been a fun hobby.
Okay.
So I'll spend a couple hours on a Saturday editing an episode, and it's a good release to help me use some of the skills that I have and be creative, but it's not super stressful and super time consuming.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So boundaries and hobbies. Those are the big things.
Okay. I like that. Now, what's one thing, this is a question that I had that I was just curious about, like, because you seem to be an uber driven guy, like very articulate. Obviously you've got a good foundation of just the ability to create and do all those things. Have you had mentorship along the way, like along this journey, like from either someone that's kind of came before you or from an executive that gave you direction? And then the second part of that, is there any one thing that an executive you work for has either said to you or done that has really been like epiphanal in like either the elevation of your either personal self or in your professional self?
Yeah, I mean, my last executive, for all his issues and weaknesses, was actually, we had a great relationship. I, actually knew him, or had known him for like, I think it was like 12 or 15 years before I started even supporting him directly as his assistant. So we had a good history. He knew me really well. I knew him really well, which, is good and bad because, you're each other's strengths, but also weaknesses.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a couple moments where he would say things like this was probably 2 years before he got fired and I started my side hustle, blogging and training assistants. He said something like, it was just one day random. He's like, you should like start writing ideas down for helping assistants. Like he just said that, like
just randomly.
Just randomly. And it was just like one of those things that stuck with me. I was like, yeah, I could see myself having fun doing that, but I was like, I'm too busy.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have time. So I literally didn't do anything with it until he was fired. I resigned and I had this big space and time to just think and figure out what I wanted to do. And then it came back.
In hindsight, was that him just seeing this in you that you didn't see yourself? Like he saw your ability and what you could do with it.
Oh yeah.
That's cool 100%. Though. That's really cool.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, you could even say it was prophetic. It was just very, very forward thinking and like, okay, like this guy has this in him. But he was also like, well, but I also need him, so I don't want him to leave me. So keep him busy, kind of a thing. But anyway, yeah. And then as far as mentors, I mean, just as I've put myself out there after that role and getting into this current role that I have, I've really networked with so many assistants all over the world, other thought leaders, other authors. A couple of my friends are big. They're not in the assistant industry, but they're big business author people. So my friend Mike Weinberg, who's a sales management guru, best-selling author, and then my friend John Ruhlin, who wrote a book called Giftology. It's another great deal, but they both were very encouraging early on and introduced me to certain people and have just been supportive along the way. And so it's always helpful to have a couple people like that can kind of encourage you. And even when I was writing my book, my friend Mike, he'd already written 3 best-selling sales books, and he just gave me some really, really, really good advice on the book. And I just remember like, okay, all right. And then as I started getting into the process more, I was like, wow, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. There's value in association, right? Like who you surround yourself with, it has you can have a great value on your life. Like, what about how is all of this, working with all of these different executives and now the creation of your own business? Like, how's it made you a better leader yourself, both professionally and personally? Like, has it helped you blossom in those areas?
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's practical things like I now am not financially relying upon one source of income. Right. And so that's been a big weight off of my shoulder, my wife's shoulder, my family shoulder, like just knowing that like, okay, if this business stops making money, I still have a day job. Or if I lose my day job, I still have this business that's making money. Like, so even just the opportunities that brings and the flexibility that brings and the control that brings, in the sense of I can say no to a lot of things because I have this flexibility and these opportunities. So it's made me a better prioritizer, because before it was like, oh, I've got to do everything, but now it's like I can be selective. So
Right.
if I get a speaking request for some event and they say, well, we only have $500 to pay speakers. Well, when I first started, I was like, that's a lot of money
Yeah.
to speak. I can't believe somebody would pay me to do that.
Right.
But now that I've gotten into the world and know a little bit more about the ins and outs of that world, I'm like, okay, this is embarrassing. You're getting $50,000 from that sponsor, and you're gonna,
Right.
do all those. You're gonna pay speakers. So, but I have the ability. I know a lot of speakers in my industry that don't have the opportunity to say no because they need everything they can because that's their only source of income.
Right.
So I can say no to things. I can have some creative, freedom to write a book, do a podcast, put out an online course, host an event, whatever I want to do. It's done that. And then personally, I mean, like I said, it's very, very helpful to have a hobby and have those boundaries, but it's easier to have a hobby and easier to have those boundaries when you have, like I said, these multiple streams of income, so that you're not like worried that you can't pay the bill next month if you take a few days
flexibility
off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, financial flexibility is an amazing gift that you can give to yourself, so you're not. I think that the ability to say no to things is, gosh, that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah.
What is your, I'm assuming, so when I think about like what you do and like just the world that having an assistant myself and the communication between the two parties, how have your core values made you like really top level and who you are in this world, right? Because I think when I think about the complexity of the relationship, right, I think communication is vastly important, but I also think trust and loyalty and those type of things, because I mean you're being given the keys to a very valuable organization, if you will, in a lot of instances. Like how have your core values really kept you like in that focus of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I talked about at the beginning, I've always been a helper. I just really, I get up in the morning and excited to help other people.
That's
so
cool.
if I see that my executive has the energy and the time to take their kids to the pool for an afternoon, or if I see that my my executive has this presentation coming up or this speaking gig coming up at this big conference, and I see that I can help with the slide deck and really make sure it doesn't have any typos in it, make sure it makes sense, and help them work through that. If I see that we need to raise $15 million in the next 12 months and I have, some control over, hey, I've got my own network, maybe some of those people want to invest. And that just keeps me excited about it. And so my value of helping others really helps me do my job better. And then as of course on the side hustle side with the assistant stuff, it's the same deal. Like I just got an email from an assistant who went to one of our free webinars about salary negotiation. And she's like, I took this webinar, I followed all the steps, and I'm just happy to say that I just got a 30% salary increase because I followed all the steps that I learned in this. And another one sent an email saying, I just landed a new role, making a 50% more money than I was making before. And it's like, that's why I do this.
That's
like,
gotta feel awesome.
My value of helping people and seeing them reach their goals and get more opportunities and really resist burnout and lead well. That really, really helps.
Have you always had awesome communication skills? Like, have you always been able to like, okay, let's talk about that. Because I'm a big believer that, I mean, I think communication can be either the greatest gift of a relationship or the detriment of a relationship. Right. How have you gotten to where you are, and how bad was it? And how did you transition?
I was a homeschool preacher kid, shy, shy kid,
So,
hardly said a word,
not super social, like
not social, awkward, just quiet. And everybody's, you're so quiet. You're so quiet. And when I would say something, like in high school, like other high schoolers, students would say, wow, Jeremy said a word, or Jeremy speaks, or something like that,
Wow.
So anyway, I got a job at Walmart when I was 16 or 17, and it was required, like, hey, how may I help you? Like,
Right.
can I help you find something? You had to talk to strangers.
Right.
That was your job on the floor. And so anyway, I started getting a little bit of out of my shell then I started playing guitar and singing in about when I was 17 or 18, around that time. So I kind of was coming out of my shell then. And
Well, now,
then,
hold on a minute. Now that's a gutsy move, man. I mean, I mean, to go from like not saying a word in high school to like singing and picking up a guitar.
well, what's funny is it's interesting because I had this weird thing where I hated talking. Like I would do music for youth group and church and whatever. And I hated if I had to say even like 3 words in between a song.
Okay.
I just hated it. I was like, I had to prepare, I had to take a deep breath, I had to whatever. But when it was singing a song, I had my guitar playing. So it was kind of like this barrier between me and the people.
Okay.
And it was a song. I was like, oh, I'm singing a song. Like, this is what you do.
Right.
And it was more like memorizing a song or whatever.
Okay.
So it took me, like, I was terrible at the speaking part, just terrible. And so over time, I just did a little bit more. And then what's funny is when I started the assistant training side gig, I got a speaking request to go to Frankfurt, Germany, and speak at the European Central Bank with their annual event for, like, I don't know, 100 assistants or something like that. And I had never actually done a public speaking event in person. I had done a couple of virtual ones.
Yeah.
But I had been blogging, I had been built up my street cred and whatever. And so I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So after I did it, my wife was there. She got to go with me on that trip, and she told the person that was running it, like, oh, this is Jeremy's first time speaking.
Hey, don't say that.
And they're like, I was like, what are you doing, honey? But no, like, so when it comes to public speaking, I'll just close with this. I had to write out. So I worked for a public speaker. He was a pastor. He spoke 3-4 times, sometimes 5 times every weekend, every week. Right. And so I saw the outline, the manuscript, I saw the formula, the flow, and I knew what went on behind the scenes. And he was also published a few books, so I'd seen that too, and that helped me when I was getting to my book. But then my current executive is also a big public speaker. He doesn't do as much of the writing out the outline and the manual, whatever, but I've learned a lot from him. But what I did is I would write out every single word I was going to say, and then I would read through it, edit it, chop it up, and I would literally go on stage with a word for word manuscript, and I'd practice it a whole bunch. But almost that's like what I would do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and so that's how I started. And I would just, every single time, I would just go word for word. I would think through every single thing I was going to say. And then as I did that more and more, I would start going on stage with more of a filled in outline. Yeah. And then I'd go on stage with just an outline. And then I'd go on stage with no outline and just the slides. So as I just repetition. Yeah. That's how I worked on my communication. You just do it over and over again. And then as far as written communication, it's just writing every day. Like when I was doing the book, I just had to write every day. Yeah.
Has that helped with your communication just on a personal level? Like just talking to the executive or talking to a fan, your wife and your friends and everybody?
Yeah. I mean, writing the book helped. Obviously public speaking has helped, but even things like filler words, trying to, I'm still not great at it if I'm not as prepped, but being okay with awkward silences instead of saying, yeah, right. So, and that really, it's really interesting. If you can be decent at verbal communication, just decent, not even good, but decent at it, you are automatically in this like upper echelon of people in the world, and how you can, the opportunities you get, the respect you get, the negotiation you can do, you know, all these things. So it's a big deal. And it just took me a lot of years and a lot of practice.
Well, it's like everything, you put in the reps, right? I mean,
yeah.
you want to get healthy, you want to get fit, if you want to go to the gym, you can't just go once, you got to go, right? It's like, you got to go for a long time. So that's awesome, man. That's really cool. Yeah. So man, to wrap up, what is, I hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, is there another book in the plans? What's next for you? Just the growth of your organization of helping other assistants. Like, what do you have on deck?
Yeah, man. I really, like you said earlier, I don't want to write another book. Are you crazy?
I know.
I will someday, but
yeah.
My day job's pretty busy. I work for a company called Capacity, and we're a support automation AI powered platform. And so we went from, I was hire number 1, and now we have 100 employees. And Whoa. So it's taking a lot more of my time, which is fine. I love it. I love working for my executive. I love the team. But a book is not in the cards anytime soon. So what I'm basically, my goal is to just stay consistent. So release a podcast episode every week. I have a weekly 30-minute Zoom chat with assistants all over the world, just to say hi and help them connect and talk about different topics. I did run a premium membership where we do monthly coaching training sessions.
Cool.
And so I really just try to be consistent and be here, because a lot of the other trainers in my industry have come onto the scene, and they're all this and doing this, right. And then they just disappear, or they burn out, or they whatever. And so my goal is to just stay consistent and keep helping people.
And that's going to be that'll be your golden goose right there. Cause like you said, like we live in a world now where, you know, I'm in the coaching world as well. And it's like, you know, every day there's a new guru popping up, and everybody's like, oh my gosh. I mean, just do what you do. Be good at, be excellent at what you do, stay consistent, be committed to it, and you'll be there in the end. Right. Yeah. So hats off to you, brother. I'm proud of you, man. So my suggestion would be for anybody listening, like whether you're an assistant or you have a desire to be an assistant or whatever, this book is top quality for a lot of reasons, like communication and your ability to, like you said, be in that top 5% of people who are just able to have conversations and write well, and those things will serve you in life like no tomorrow. So congrats on the books, brother. Thanks for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it, and wish you nothing but massive success.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. And if anybody wants to hear about how to hire an assistant or fire an assistant or whatever you want to help with, just feel free to reach out, leaderassistant.com. I'd be happy to help.
Is that the best? So if they go to leaderassistant.com, they can find the book, they can find all your social media, they can find everything.
Yep.
All right, perfect. That'll be in the show notes too, guys, so you don't have to write that down if you're driving or whatnot. But thanks again, brother, and look forward to following you and watching all your success.
Yeah, thanks, man. Take care.
All right, bud. See you in a bit. Hey, before you go, I'd just like to say thank you again for listening to the Thrive Forever Fit podcast and watching on YouTube. It means the absolute world to me. And if you would do me one favor, and that is simply subscribe and review this podcast on whatever platform it is that you enjoy it on, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, doesn't matter. I would absolutely be so grateful and so thankful if you do that for me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you again next week with an awesome episode. Bye.